Hello and welcome to the September 10th edition of the Bubb Report. I am Rion Charles. This week on our program, we sit with a metaphysical and developmental coach who recently set up shop in Grenada. In an era when mental health and wellness are becoming much more prevalent among people of African descent, we will discuss the benefits of such approaches for people's overall well-being. The National Council for Behavioral Health states that though 20% of Black Americans are more likely to report psychological distress than whites, they are less likely to seek treatment and stick to it. Moreover, cultural Christianity has engendered negative attitudes towards wellness practices such as yoga and meditation. Additionally, many people in the Afro-Caribbean community have been raised to think that strength is holding it all in. Also on the report, we take a pulse of the fiscal health of Grenada by examining a slew of developments that are of interest to the national community. The government's recent pronouncements on the reacquisition of 2 properties in the south of the island may have significant implications for the public purse. Additionally, the state recently announced a revenue windfall from the issuance of 2,000 new Grenadian passports through the Citizenship by Investment program. What are the financial implications of this announcement against the backdrop of the recent supplementary budgetary allocation approved by the Parliament?
This, in a proper context, it is the largest supplemental budget in the context of additional resources being asked of the people of this country. These are just fundamental facts. This is the largest allocation, supplementary budget in the context of
Honorable, you have the position? Just hold, please. There's a light.
Listen.
No, Honorable, this is a procedure.
Yes, I know.
It's for everyone.
I've been here long enough to know the procedure.
Right. So I said about her.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will object because the member for St. George Northwest and the leader of His Majesty's opposition is openly presenting information that is false. And I'm saying it's on record. The supplementary budget last year was last year. So if he's saying in the face of the record he wants to insist on perpetuating a falsehood, then I want the record to reflect that.
Mr. Speaker,
that this supplementary estimate is not the largest estimate that was brought before this House. Because last year, $189 million was presented to this House compared to $148 million last year.
We welcome our guests, Oliver Joseph, former Business Development Minister, Brian Samuel, Public-Private Partnership Consultant, Dr. Akasha, Entrepreneur and Development Coach, and Richard Duncan, Chairman of Grenada's Citizenship by Investment Committee. Here now is our host, Dr. Kellon Bubb, with this week's editorial titled BRICS De-Dollarization and Implications for the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. We thank you for joining us.
A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners, and we welcome you to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Please remember to like and share this week's live stream. Now, the BRICS grouping of major emerging economies held its 15th summit last month. The summit heralded an expansion of the bloc and strategized greater use of local currencies and the possibility of a BRICS currency, which may have the potential to challenge the dominance of the US dollar. Now, any expansion of the BRICS grouping could determine the speed with which the bloc adopts commercial and financial systems outside of the dollar sphere. The war in Ukraine and the freezing of Russian foreign reserves in 2022 have prompted much discussion on the, quote, weaponization of the dollar, the splintering of geopolitical blocs, and ultimately the inexorable decline in the use of the dollar, or de-dollarization. An integral part of this debate will not only be on how those geopolitical groupings develop, but also on whether other currencies can challenge the dollar's international role. However, one must be aware that perceived threats to the dollar's role in the global financial system are nothing new. They have been a frequent occurrence since the 1980s. Obviously, if there comes a time when the US ceases to be the world's largest economy, the dollar's status would certainly be called into question. The same was true of the pound sterling in the first half of the 20th century. So, what would a new BRICS currency mean for the currency unions whose countries are pegged to the US dollar? In the case of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, the EC dollar has been fixed to the US dollar at a rate of EC 270 or 267 to 1 US dollar, depending on market forces. Now, prior to this, the EC currency was fixed to the pound sterling at an exchange rate of EC dollars $4.80 to 1 sterling pound. However, following the sterling's depreciation and decline in value in the 1970s, the decision was made to shift the peg to the US dollar. Any decision to alter the peg of the EC currency rests with the Monetary Council, which is the highest decision-making body of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. Now, according to the ECCB, quote, the EC dollar's fixed exchange regime with the EC currency pegged to the US dollar at a rate of $2.70 to 1 US dollar has served the region well. The region has historically enjoyed a relatively low rate of inflation and incremental improvements in the standard of living of its citizens and economic stability, unquote. So, what will the potential of a new BRICS currency mean for the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union? While de-dollarization is taking up steam, the US dollar still dominates a global trade. It is one side of almost 90% of global forex transactions, according to the Bank of International Settlements data. De-dollarizing would need countless exporters and importers, as well as borrowers, lenders, and currency traders across the world to independently decide to use other currencies. And before we get to the first segment of this week's program, I am sad to report the death of a close and dear friend of mine who was also an avid viewer of this program. Dr. William Brazier, originally from Chicago, Illinois, and who studied medicine at St. George's University in Grenada, not only earned his medical degree on the island, but assimilated well into Grenadian culture by getting to know the cultural quirks and nuances of language, politics, and social life. Bill also became a mentor to one of my best and trusted friends, one of my closest friends, Dr. Randall Terry Christopher, and influenced his path into medicine. Dr. Christopher's success as a thriving surgeon is due in part to Dr. Brazier's great and influential mentorship. To Bill's family, we will miss him dearly, but take comfort in the fact that Bill was loved and appreciated by those who knew him. May he rest in peace, and may his memory be a blessing. And at this time, we're going to play a recording of our first segment this week. We had a conversation with a metaphysical and spiritual expert who recently opened shop in Grenada. Once we tee up that interview, we will then come back for the second segment of this week's program. Viewers and listeners, I'm now joined by our first guest for this week's edition of the Bubb Report. He is Dr. Akasha, and he is a metaphysical and development coach, and we're here to talk about demystifying spirituality. Of course, spirituality continues to be one of the great taboos in a Caribbean space that considers itself culturally Christian or Christian societies. And we're here to talk about Dr. Akasha's role in helping us to look at alternative ways of digging into the metaphysical. Dr. Akasha, welcome to the Bubb Report.
Hey, thanks, Dr. Kellen. I'm excited about being here with you. Hey, everybody.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I'm sure, like most of us in the Caribbean, you probably grew up in church.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and of course, that is the socialization by way of colonial Christianity. You were baptized, I'm sure, and you were
Amen.
given a Christian name and all of those things. So,
Amen.
what made you abandon those good Christian principles, shall we say,
Uh,
into going into African and other forms of spirituality and metaphysical things?
yeah, I love the question, and you're spot on. I grew up in a Christian church in the Seventh-day Adventist denomination, and big on healthy lifestyle, big on the Ten Commandments, especially the fourth one. Remember the Sabbath day. I can hear the preachers and my granny whispered in my ears even now. But even despite those things and growing up.
Don't forget to keep it holy. That part.
Yeah, that's
So
right. Amen. That's
please proceed.
you got it, brother. But I wouldn't say I've abandoned those principles. I think I have integrated them. I've seen them a little bit more deeper than when I was a child, when I was a teenager, when I was a young man, and they have evolved for me. The principles have evolved, and I've grown. I've grown as a result of them. So whereas before some of them were a little bit rigid and strict and dogmatic and exclusive, now I experience them as much more loving and kind and metaphysical, much more beyond the physical. Many of these principles in the Bible, as I experience them, not conceptually, but when I put them to the test, I experience something different. In fact, I would admit it was when I read the Bible through for the very first time, Dr. Kellen. I was maybe 25 at the time. This is when I left the church after reading the Bible through. And I'm like, hold on a minute. This actually is pretty good. It's not what they're telling me in church. These principles are actually pretty solid. They're not Christian, they're not religious. They're spiritual, metaphysical principles that if I align my life with them, I will be like God, like the Bible says. So I haven't abandoned them at all. I think I've more integrated them. I trust them. I've proven them.
So let us talk about that moment when you decide that, you know what, I'm not going to be getting up on Saturday morning anymore and going to church. When was there a life event that occurred that made you make that life altering decision?
Oh, you get straight to it.
I
Um,
do.
I was living in Bermuda at the time, my family and
Mhm,
I, and I was an elder in the church, the youngest in that church and in the denomination at the time, and because I love God, I actually still love God, not the same one that I did back then. Not that God has changed, it's just that I've seen God and that principle a little bit differently. And so I'm very much a devotee of divine principles of the universe,
mhm,
of life. And so that love is still there. And back then, I was minding my own business. I wasn't meditating or anything back then, but suddenly I felt like I was pulled into a different kind of reality, where I could see beyond the physical things that we typically speak of and touch. And it felt just fine, it felt safe. It was like being embraced by love, being touched by love, not in a material way, but in a sacred and spiritual way. And that invited me to dive deeper into what God is, who is God, and who am I. So
mhm,
at that time I was invited to really answer those three big questions. What am I about, what am I here for, and what is God on my own? So
mhm,
I went on a pilgrimage. Actually, I went walking 500 miles on a pilgrimage in Spain called the Camino de Santiago, and that's where I
mhm.
met God for myself and
Okay.
decided, this is what this thing is about. This
But
is what.
if I may press you here, how is that different from, because of course in Christian doctrine and theology, especially the Christianity of the evangelical persuasion, they talk about also meeting God, but in the context of getting saved. So how is that different from that experience that you had in
Well,
Spain?
actually, it's a good question. I don't know how it's different, to be frank with you,
Hmm.
because I can read, you and I are academics in many ways. So I can read about some people's experiences as a sort of second and in a sort of phenomenological way. And I can have
Hmm.
my own sort of direct experience with the thing. I can only speak about my direct experience. This is why I don't know
Okay.
if it's the same or different. My direct experience of what I say meeting God, I really only use that term God because it's more familiar to me. It's what I
Hmm.
grew up understanding, So when we talk about this being that is all loving, that is all mind, that is all intelligent, that is omnipresent, and coming in contact with that experience as, for me, as a principle, not a being that I could see somewhere in the sky or somewhere else, but a
Hmm.
principle that pervades all of life, all of my life experiences. This is what I call God.
Hmm.
This is what I
Hmm.
call life. In fact, I really just call it principle because it's a thing
Right.
that works wherever I am, whatever religious practices I have. These days, Dr.
Hmm.
Kellen, when people ask me what's my religion, I honestly say that I'm a Kuzendu Farai. And they look
Hmm.
stunned and they're like, what is that? And I'm like, well, a Kuzendu Farai is really my way of honoring and integrating all the religious traditions that have impacted my life: Christianity,
Hmm.
Zen Buddhism, Hinduism, Rastafarianism. And I could keep
Hmm.
adding, 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 adding. All of
Hmm.
them have something powerful to offer. But I think they
Hmm.
can blind us to the reality of who we are and what God is. And so I step
But
away.
because part of it too is that it's so compartmentalized.
Yeah,
All of these faith
yeah.
traditions, and if you believe in one, you're expected
Can't,
to
you
follow
can't,
those
that's
traditions.
right.
And but part of that is it's this idea of supremacy, that whatever deity that particular faith tradition falls under, that deity is the one true
That's the boss.
deity.
That's right.
That
That's the
supremacy
boss
clause is
deity.
there. Yeah. So how do you how do you parse all of those ideas? I mean,
That I don't
and
get
make sense
involved.
of it? Okay.
This is the whole thing. I don't get involved in those ideas at all. I get involved in my direct experience. So
Hmm.
when people come to me, students, clients, friends, we operate a metaphysical store on the island, and when people walk
Hmm.
in the store, they are searching. They're like, "What is going on with my life?" Some of them are having some um spiritual awakening experiences, we will call them.
Hmm.
They are hearing voices, they're seeing things that are beyond the material things. They are experiencing a deeper level of love and yearning, and they're like, what does this mean?
Hmm.
And Dr. Kalan, who am I to tell people what it means? I say, follow your direct experiences.
Hmm.
Nothing is more true than that. Nothing is more true than our direct experience. Nothing I can say, nothing that's said in the Bible, nothing that anyone could say on a pulpit or in a high chair or anyone else, anywhere else could supersede our direct experience of life.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
trust that, and I invite people to trust that,
Yeah.
than anything that we could read in a book about anybody else's life. And not to
Hmm.
discredit other people's experiences either, but our experience is just as important and
Hmm.
perhaps should be the primary source of what we claim to be true.
Let us fast forward to your journey uh, into the metaphysical and the spiritual, because you just articulated that your experience, shall we say, is a sum total of all of the faith traditions that you have encountered. What then does that look like in respect of your current life journey? You indicated that you do have um, I'm not too sure what to call it, a spiritual drop-in center. You would have to correct me here.
Yeah, it's a no, it's a metaphysical shop, you know. So
It's
yeah,
correct. So talk to us about that metaphysical shop in the context of your spiritual journey. What's
yeah,
the symbolism of it, its significance in relation to your own journey?
yeah, great. Um, so all that I'm really about is growth. I'm really
Hmm.
about growth and the expansion of consciousness. Because I think when we grow and our minds expand, we see truly what is there. We see truly ourselves and we see others, we see life. You know, and from that, I think we fundamentally will have to also see love and experience love and see abundance and experience abundance and see gratitude and experience gratitude. Like these things are beyond the veil, I think, of coming in touch with divinity. And
Hmm.
so this is what the metaphysical space is about. What are the opportunities and resources that might support individuals with finding out for themselves who they are, what they're about, and what is God for them? So it's
Hmm.
really a space. I call it a shop, but it's really just it's a space that provides opportunities for deeper self-awareness and the expansion of
Hmm.
consciousness. So we
Hmm.
offer metaphysical books, you know, we offer some crystals, we offer incense, singing bowls, meditation mats, and yoga mats, and anything that aids in the development of one's awareness. These are the things that will be in this metaphysical space. And of
Hmm.
course, good company. There are amazing people who come into this space and who serve other clients and friends from the community who come to this space. So almost anytime you come into the shop, you're going to find a bunch of people having conversations about God and about their growth. And that's exactly what the space is for. The
Hmm.
energy of the people is phenomenal. When I walk in sometimes and I hear people talking about their life journey, that's like nothing better than that. Maybe all down is the only thing that is better than walking into a space like
Coming from a Jamaican, it's good getting that oil down endorsement. But then you're married to a Grenadian, so
this is right.
you're an
So
honorary Grenadian
so
in
I
that
do love
respect.
my fried dumpling and ackee and mushroom because I eat plant based, no meat for me, and it also has to
Hmm.
be vegan all down, Dr. Keller.
Hmm.
So none.
And where is your space located in Grenada?
It's in Grenada. It's in Lamarquie.
Okay.
So you know that mall next to Spiceland Mall,
Hmm.
across from um, the shopping section there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
it's a beautiful, quiet space.
Right. Okay. Okay. Now let us talk about the spiritual. Now you hear a lot of people say, I am spiritual, but I'm not religious.
Yes.
Would you say that you're one of those people that consider
No,
yourself you're spiritual, but you're not religious? And
no.
but fundamentally, talk to us about why people have the tendency to identify themselves as more spiritual than religious with
Yeah,
by saying, look, and they try to emphasize that, look, I'm not religious at all.
yeah. Yeah, it's a really beautiful question, and I think it illustrates the journey that we are individually on, but also collectively on. Because
Mhm.
religion religion has done some harm to people,
Mhm.
individually and collectively, to races of people, like the Afro race, Afro Caribbean group of people. Like religion has done a disservice to people. And I don't think religion is bad, to be clear, but the way that religion shows up in the lives of people can be quite constraining. You know, don't do this, do that. You know, you shouldn't like those people. You shouldn't condone those behaviors. It polarizes us. It sets us against each other. It ironically, because many religions also preach love, and ironically, it it distracts us from loving each other because we then start focusing on what other people are doing, how they're living their life, what they shouldn't be doing, and so on, and what we should be reading. what we should be practicing as opposed to actually being with each other, embodying and expressing love. And this is where spirituality comes in. I think the world, and this is true for Grenadians too, Dr. Kellen, like the world, Grenadians, all of us are looking for something deeper. We're looking for love. We're looking for truth. We're looking for purpose. We don't typically find those things in religion. Unfortunately, we find those things in spirituality, in a deeper sense of experiencing God for ourselves. This is what I think of as spirituality, like our own sort of sense of life and touching that. And without having some rules about how we ought to do it, how we ought to go about experiencing life. So spirituality touches us in a much deeper way than religion can ever do. Because religion, again, is building off spirituality. Spirituality is the very foundation of religion, but sometimes religious practices and organizations forget the pillars on which they're built and become dogmatic. These are the ways that we should do things, and we lose sight of spirituality. So people saying I'm spiritual more than I'm religious is an indication, I think, of our growth and our demand for more, our demand for love, for connection, for abundance, for purpose, as opposed to, what Ellen G. White said, what Joseph Smith said, what the Pope has said. Like, we want more than that. And being a Afro-Caribbean person, an Afrocentric person, both of those things are really important in our lives. This is why I was saying no earlier, that to me it's not even an either or principle. Religion is just as important as spirituality, and they're really not meant to be two distinct things. Religion is built on spirituality. And we have this idea that they are separated because of the mistake that we sometimes make with espousing religious practices and dogmas and fundamental beliefs and so on over spirituality. This is where we get into a little bit of a trouble. But they're not that distinct.
Now, you brought up African spirituality here, but of course, I'm also going to link that to any practice that's dissimilar to Christianity. In our societies, there is a tendency still to stigmatize and to discriminate against people, quite frankly, who practice elements of African spirituality. One of the last discriminated against faith traditions in the Caribbean, which quite frankly is the only indigenous faith tradition in the Caribbean, which are the spiritual Baptists or the Orisha or the Shangos. We still continuously discriminate against these people, so much so that they are not part of the national community in respect of you do not see spiritual Baptists leading invocations at national events. You do not see Shangos or Orishas leading prayer at national events. It's only recently we saw Rastafarians doing that, but even Rastafarians are also not part and parcel of any sort of a national activity, right? Where you have these people doing invocations. What you find are the colonial Christian denominations are the ones who dominate these faith practices. Do you find in your case that that you would experience an uphill battle given those deep-seated prejudices against faith traditions that and spiritual practices that are unique to us as people of African descent?
There's so many ways to respond to this question. The first one that comes up for me is that I am not a fighter. Like I'm not gonna flee from things either. But I don't think there's a battle here, to be frank. I don't think there's a battle here. So I actually have a lot of respect for religious teachers and pastors and so on. The challenge that you touched on, that I'm so in alignment with you on, is the colonial aspect of our religious practice. Now, I don't think religion in and of itself is colonial. It's like the elements that you part of what you touch on, which is where we have this, unfortunately, this culture of dominance that pervades many of our institutions and traditions, religion being one of them. And so we have this practice of mine is better than yours, and therefore yours should not exist. That's colonial. Christianity in and of itself isn't colonial. Christianity, I think, was a vehicle for espousing colonial ideas, which we are experiencing and which we are both talking about now. But the fundamental beliefs about doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, love
Love thy
yourself.
neighbor as thyself, except
Exactly.
check. We're not going to love
That's
those
right.
neighbors, but please proceed.
That's so that principle isn't a colonial principle. The way that we go about it is colonial. The way that we go about it exposes these cultures of dominance and patriarchy and sexism and homophobia that I think is unhealthy, and actually I think is destructive. I think it is unlike human, unlike where we are going in terms of our evolution. Any religious practices that embodies and celebrates these things, I think is actually not in service of individuals, our progress, our evolution. It's not in service of the very best of us, of our transformation. And this is why I think many religious traditions and organizations are not serving the needs of individuals and where we are going as a human family, or even as a country, as Grenada. Like, we need a little bit more than these things. People are demanding more. People actually want, as I mentioned earlier, to be more purposeful, to be more loving, and to experience those things, not to be told what to do, what not to do. Like, we're grown-ups. you know, we are grown-ups, and I think it's important that we experience this and that is celebrated in us. And the Afrocentric religious practices, I think, are super important. Dr. Kellen, I'm of the view that many religious practices, I think they ought to stay within the ethnic group that they were developed, because partly of culture. Listen, you and I grew up in the Caribbean, and we were socialized into a certain culture. And if we then take that socialized parts of our culture into a European context, it won't make sense to them. they will reject it because that is not their culture. So when we then take a Christianity or a this or a that was birthed in another culture and try to practice it in our Afrocentric or Hindu-centric culture, I don't think that is in service of our development. I don't think it's in service of honoring our own sense of self, our own identity as a people. This is my perspective. A lot of people can disagree with this, but I think because the religious and spiritual tradition comes out of a people. It comes out of a people. And where people are, it's not that I am against like globalization and the movements of people, but where people are and the birth of those traditions in that culture, I think it's a gateway for the realization of those religious and spiritual traditions is a gateway for us to realize ourselves. It's a gateway for us to actualize ourselves. Now, it gets all messy when we start bringing in other religious practices into our own cultural practices. Then we're not going to be self-actualized. We're not going to be realized as our fullest and true potential. So I think it's important that we're like, okay, actually, what is our spiritual and religious tradition as a people? And actually align ourselves with that deeper and deeper. So when I talk about metaphysics, it's not like a particular sort of branch of anything. It's really like an invitation to look deep within ourselves, to step inside of ourselves and to see what we see and to honor what we see.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I when I in my first the first time that I actually immigrated to from Grenada into Asia, one of the things that you always heard from your Christian brethren in Grenada is that yoga is demonic, or Buddhism is demonic. You want to stay away from those people.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the awakenings that I had when I left a country as religiously homogenous as Grenada, and lived in Taiwan for about 4 years when I lived there. And you meet people who are Buddhists, and you meet people who practice yoga, and you meet people who practice Tai Chi,
Yes.
and I'm saying to myself, well, are all of these millions of people going to this Christian hell? I said Christian hell, forgive me. I'm not a theologist, but are all of these people going to hell, right?
Yeah.
In the way that Christians perceive hell, and so do you find though that there has been an evolution in thinking around wellness practices such as yoga,
Yes.
breathing
Yeah.
exercises,
Yeah.
meditation, especially amongst people of color?
Yes, yes, and it's exactly for some of the reasons we were talking about, because we
Yeah.
as a people are demanding more depth. We're demanding more wellness, more love, more soul in our lives. And a lot of these spiritual practices, a lot of these practices are gateway into the experience of holistic wellness, gateway into the experience of mental well-being, psychological wellness, spiritual wellness. So if anything opens a gateway into deepening our connection with the divine, how
Hmm.
can those things be bad?
Yeah.
How can those things be bad?
Hmm.
I have so many family members in the church, any church, and sometimes when they come from church, they're so miserable, and they talk about this person and that person. And the last thing I hear about, sometimes I have to say, so what did the pastor say? What did they preach about? you know, and how does that impact your life? So
Hmm.
I don't mean any disrespect by this, although some people might feel offended by it, and I really apologize in advance.
Yes.
Sometimes actually even going to church is like hell. And I don't mean to say, oh, that is hell. What I actually mean to say is that anything that detracts us from divine connection, from love, that creates a sort of mental obstacle and causes pain in our growth and in our lives, then that thing I think we ought to have less of it, not more.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And for the most part, even in my life, yoga has created more connection for me, more realization of divinity, of love, and for my family. A
Hmm.
lot of these practices have opened up more well-being, more abundance, more gratitude, more good connection. And I think that's what we are in need of as a society, as a world.
Hmm. Hmm.
More of those good things, not less, and not more of the other things that are not serving us so well.
Yeah. You talk about spiritual benefits, but let us talk about the health benefits of yoga,
Yeah,
breathing exercises, wellness. Let's talk about those health benefits.
yeah. I'll tell you a little story, everybody. There's a lady who came into the shop shortly after we opened in last year, December.
Hmm.
And she came December, in January, in February, and she looked extremely sad and depressed. And she had been working with, I think, therapists and so on. Um, and, you know, over time, she started practicing yoga in the studio there. She started having conversations with some of us, because I'm a developmental coach as well, which means that I help people just make sense of their lives and
Hmm.
make sense of the world around them and transform and grow. As I mentioned, my soul thing is about growth. Like, how do we expand our consciousness and grow and evolve, be better, be more than we think we can be? And so just having conversations, her practicing yoga, her experiencing some Reiki sessions, within a short time, she's laughing. Her kids are coming in the store. They don't want to leave. Like, these sorts of things, I think, are so essential. So when people experience a space And churches can be this way as well. When people experience a space that welcome the fullness of who they are and serve them with expanding their mind and growing, like that's the thing that I'm for. That's the thing I think we need more of in our country, in our nation, in our world. That space where people feel seen, where people feel loved, where people feel supported in their growth and in their evolution, where people feel healed and well, where people's mindsets and their psychological and psychic space feel expansive as opposed to constricted and confined. Like, this is what we're about. This is what this space is about. This is what spirituality and metaphysics is about.
Well, churches may say that they do all of those things that you just listed there.
Amen, amen, amen. But there's not the only place where people can experience those things. So again, more the merrier. I want to see, I'm sure this is like you too, Dr. Kellen. Like, I want to see a Grenada where every single resident is flourishing and thriving. And if they don't go to church, I still want to see them thrive and flourish. If they don't believe in the Christian God, I still want them to thrive and flourish. It's our birthright. We deserve to thrive and to flourish. Whether or not we go to church, whether or not we are Roman Catholics, whether or not we're atheists, it doesn't matter. We are human beings. We are Grenadians, and all of us deserve to flourish and to thrive.
Absolutely. Dr. Kasher, is there anything that I missed that you feel as if our valued audience should glean from this conversation?
The main thing that was coming up for me is how much I enjoyed this conversation with you.
Yes.
And I would love to do it again with you, maybe when you visit the island, and I feel it's an invitation to more of us, though, Dr. Kellen, more of us brothers, more of us Canadians, more of us human beings talking about growing up, talking about opportunities to expand our mind, opportunities to evolve, talking freely, respectfully, openly. Like, this is the invitation I feel like you have offered in this conversation with me and in this podcast, the Bubb Report, that's available to so many people. Like, that can more of us be in more of these conversations together and to learn and grow together. Not be like, pointing fingers and accusing and judging. Like, those days are done. No, we're not going to grow and evolve doing those things. No, we need to connect and we need to engage and we need to support each other's growth. So this is the last thing. It was in our conversation, but we didn't talk about it explicitly. So this is, I want to thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. Well, Dr. Kasher, thank you for making yourself available to the Bubb Report. This has been a long time in coming. But we I suppose we were just our priorities did not match, and so
the timing is perfect.
Timing is always right. Yes, as the spiritual would say, there is no better time than now.
This is right. I'm so glad that we got this now, and I look forward to others.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, that is Dr. Kasher. He is a metaphysical and developmental coach. We will be right back with the panel segment of the week. Please stand by.
Added an additional condition in the laws that you have to ensure that 20% of the investment must be your input in the project. In other words, you can't just walk into the country and say you want to be in CBI program and you're a papa, you have nothing. So, well, any one of us could be a CBI applicant. Why couldn't Dummy James be one? Why not? You don't have to come with nothing. You don't even have to come with clothes. Just come. And you just get some bright fellow, capable marketer to market and put some big title behind you and go around and get some application, get the citizenship, and the project is all funded by the country's application. So we said 20% must come from your investment. And several of the investors have in fact met that. Some of them had difficulties with their amount, but we say 20%. You got to put something down. So, Mr. Speaker, the gentleman, because he couldn't get the application, he did put down his 20%. But later on he said he has to recoup the 20% from CBI application. Well, that means the same thing. That means you are putting nothing. That means you're putting nothing. So he decided he's not doing this. So we said, and I think that was really that drove him with that desperation. Because I don't know what he needed. Because if your construction cost, as the engineer pointed out, is $30-something million, and you collected over $50-something million already, you still want another $40-something million in our application? I mean, I don't understand. Imagine a white man coming and tell me we must change the government of Grenada. Could you believe this character? If I was in the street, I'd say another word.
On assuming office, we felt it best to engage respectfully into negotiations with the owners of the Kiwana Bay project. And we are happy to report to the nation and to this Honorable House that we have essentially reached a settlement. We have reached an agreement with the Kiwana Bay principals that will be consummated during the course of this week, before this week is up. The agreement will be consummated. And that agreement will, again, see the Kiwana Bay property, just over 5 acres of land on the far end of Grenada's beach, again coming back to the people of Grenada.
Viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Now, it is always instructive and necessary to take a pulse of the fiscal health of any national community. Of course, we go to the medical doctor, we go to the physician to do our annual checkups, and we believe here on the Bubb Report that it is important to gather financial experts who can also assist us in taking a pulse of the fiscal and financial health of Grenada. Now, within the last month, there has been several interesting developments on the fiscal front that we believe necessary to discuss and address here on the program. And I'm happy to be joined by our esteemed panelists this week who are here to unpack and dissect some of those issues. We have our returning champion and a best-selling author. Brian, I see your book is all over the place. Best-selling author, and he's also public-private partnership consultant, Mr. Brian Samuel. And we have Mr. Richard Duncan OBE, who is the chair of the CBI Board of Grenada. There has been some significant happenings there that we want to unpack and discuss. And of course, Mr. Oliver Joseph. Mr. Oliver Joseph was former Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Trade in the previous dispensation, but his expertise is also international trade. Gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report.
Good morning, Kelon. Good morning, listeners. Thank you for having us on.
Yes, absolutely. Now, before we get to the substantive conversations that we want to have, I want to begin, gentlemen. Of course, at the start of the program today, I had an editorial in which I discussed de-dollarization. Now, Mr. Duncan, you're a banker. You're familiar with the banking system. Mr. Joe, you're a trade specialist. In the context of we're seeing BRICS and all of that, how do you think the prospects of de-dollarization would look like for the Eastern Caribbean Monetary Union? Who wants to go with that? Richard, I would start with you with that question.
Well, no problem at all, Dr. Bob. So I always believe in allowing the experts at the central bank to do their work. And I'm quite certain that this matter, as with the matter of cryptocurrencies and such alike, would have been taken into account in the risk management, of the currency union and the stability of the EC dollar. That said, in your opinion piece, you also pointed out that if ever a shift in peg has to occur, it would not have been the first time because the dollar was once pegged to the pound sterling. So I think that was quite instructive on your part. So allow the economists, the strategists, the risk managers at ECCB to do their research, come up with the insights as to how fast and in what direction this thing is likely to go. And I could tell you that I believe they have what it takes to ensure that whatever changes occur in the international financial space, that the integrity of the EC economies will be foremost in their mind in the way in which they proceed to addressing it. So that'll be my comment on that.
Mr. Joseph?
Thank you and good morning to all.
Yes,
my good friend Richard. Dr. Bob, is a pleasure. So looking at it from the trade perspective, I would say it depends on how many new members join BRICS. You see, it started with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. That's 5. You will need a lot more in terms of trade and the value of the dollar and the pegging of it to make it effective. And so BRICS have started the expansion, opening up, giving invitation to other countries that they trade with. And if they can get a sufficient amount of countries that trade to join, then we will start to look at the value of the currency. Because bear in mind, if you're using a basket of currency to determine the value, then you'll have to say, well, what weight will you put to each one's currency? So it's just the initial stage. So I agree with Richard fully on that. The ECCUB have the expertise that can follow this thing, track it, and make the right decision.
Yep. And of course, the ECCU has been one of the more stable, shall we say, extremely stable. I can't remember a time when, at least, and of course you gentlemen would know better than me, but a time when there was ever a devaluation crisis, as we saw in other parts of the Caribbean, which reflects that that level of excellent management that we see there at that level. Brian, I'm not too sure if you have anything to add there. Just unmute the mic, Brian, there. But I'm not too sure if you want to, we want to start off light today.
Yeah, I mean, hi, thanks again. It's good to be here again, and good to see you again, Richard. On this question about the currency, my only thing would be tread carefully, caution. I mean, we do have, I think it's been since 1969, we've been pegged to the US dollar, and we are probably the most stable currency in the world. We have not had any crisis throughout the 70s when a lot of our fellow currencies in the Caribbean were having real crises in terms of exchange rate and availability of exchange, foreign exchange. We have not had that problem. So whatever the analysts at ECCB, Timothy Antoine and his team come up with, I think it has to be governed by caution. That would be my only comment.
Absolutely. Now, gentlemen, let us get into it. It has been a very interesting time fiscally for the state of Grenada. But Mr. Joseph, I want to begin with you. Now, it would appear as if the government resolved the Kiwana Bay issue outside of court. Of course, we know that matter made its way all the way to the International Court for the Settlement of Investment Disputes. Now, in hindsight, do you believe that an out-of-court settlement was possible during your government's tenure in office?
Well, anything is possible.
Yeah.
So what you have to determine is whether a out-of-court settlement is in the best interest of Grenada or allowing the arbitration tribunal to determine the outcome. If the government of the day takes the decision that it is better to reach an out-of-court settlement with the developer because it will be less costly to the government, then it is in the interest of the government to pursue that matter. Remember, it was not our government that took the matter to court, The matter,
it was the investor.
It was the investor that took the matter. Of course, the investor took the decision thinking it is in his best interest to resolve the matter through arbitration, and therefore proceeded to file for arbitration in the matter. And our government has taken the decision that we will defend the interests of the state in arbitration. Now you have a different outcome where the government is saying that we have settled, we have reached a settlement. As I said, if it is in the best interest of Grenada, then all good to the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Duncan, in the context of the financial implications of that out-of-court settlement, do you believe that there would be benefits financially to the state in respect of, in other words, paying the significant and exorbitant legal fees that usually comes with such investment disputes? Your thoughts on how that plays out there?
Okay, so thanks a lot, Kellon, and again to my friend, Oliver, he's quite right that whoever has the reins at any one point in time would have to make those determinations, which this government has made. So the committee, right, appointed by Honorable Deacon Mitchell to lead the settlement negotiations was obviously given a clear mandate, and I want to commend the Honorable Prime Minister for the way in which he led that process to where it is at today. And I also want, as head of that committee, which is different from CBI now, to pay, tribute and say thanks to other committee members that included Leslie Ancion, legal counsel, Hassan Hadir, Mr. Henry Joseph, and of course, we worked, assiduously towards making, this thing a reality. We brought it to a particular point, and of course, the cabinet and the PM took it, over the line. Mm-hmm. So, having said that, yes, legal costs are pretty, high, exorbitant. I mean, you wouldn't want to see those bills, right? Also, to the true and real cost to me is the number of young persons who would have left TAMCC and NULO, who for the past year, because this hotel should have opened in 2022, has not had the opportunity to practice the skills that they have learned to get employment as mixologists in the culinary department, cooks, maids, the taxi people who obviously had foregone opportunities and so on, right? That is a real cost to me. And when we come on the fiscal side, remember, fiscal sustainability is key for economic progress. And therefore, fiscal stability based on the fiscal rules remain intact with this particular settlement. And you are able to induce employment to, when a substitute developer is appointed, the completion of the hotel during the construction phase, and of course, the sustained jobs, of which there'll be about 150 close to thereabouts when this project is completed. That has been delayed by almost, I would say now, but will be delayed for about 3 or 4 years, already delayed by 1 and some.
Now, you said you speak about the committee that was responsible for making proposals to the cabinet of Grenada. Can you speak to what was your pitch? What was your pitch to the litigant here? Because of course, the developer is the one that took the government to court at the time. What was your committee's pitch?
Well, no, well, it's essentially time. right? Time is money. The developer is asking for a particular sum before the international court. We would have said there's a probability of success. So he was asking, I think, 111 million US plus interest. And if there's a 50% chance that he succeeds, then you're looking at 50-something odd $million that we would have to cough up to settle this matter. So you want to come up with a settlement way below that 50% chance of success, because if you fail, you see the cost. So then the real pitch was in terms of what really and truly do we have on the table? What have you lost? What damage, what hurt, have incurred as a result of the so-called breach by the Grenada authorities. And we had the conversation around that for several months. Obviously, as any good negotiator, he would come up with certain counterpoints, ourselves likewise. And essentially, we got it to a point where amounts and time for settlement came into the equation. We made our recommendation, and then the cabinet did further work under the leadership of the Prime Minister to bring it to where it is right now. So,
but the previous administrations, Dr. Mitchell's theory of the case when he was Prime Minister was that the developer really breached the rules in respect of the upfront funding that he needed to provide, the upfront investment that he needed to provide for that project, and he did not want to do that. So that was a sticking point. How was that fleshed out?
Yes, well, again, the allegations and counter allegations would go before the court for settlement, because anyone can assert whatever he or she wishes to assert in his memorial or counter memorial of claims, as it were, and then go before the court and prove your point. So our head was not in the space as to who breached what. That was not the issue. The issue is breaches have occurred or alleged to have occurred. The project is stopped. There are people who need to be employed. There's an economy to continue growing and developing and so on. What is the cost or price that we intend to pay to get this thing resolved? There's one number before the court, $111 million plus interest. All right, there's a probability that you can win. We might lose. You work that out and you look towards getting a settlement. And that's the whole idea behind, negotiations. There's a give and take. You go to court, somebody wins, the other body loses. And our experience before exit is clear with respect to Grenada. Government had a couple opportunities to settle the Grenada dispute, so to speak, before the matter got to the international court. And what we end up settling for international court was way above what was potentially possible. In fact, the numbers that were on the table at the time were lower had we agreed then and settled as a government, as parties outside of court. So that was a lesson for us, even though some people believe that, no, this is different from Grenada and we will win. There's absolutely no guarantee. So you go based on the probability of success and you look at the opportunity cost. Apart from the financial cost in terms of legal fees and so forth, the opportunity cost. What is happening while this edifice stands? In the sea blast, exposed, kids are leaving school, looking for employment opportunities and so on. It's a waste. So I just want to make those couple points, Kelon.
Okay. Did we pay anything to the developers?
I'm not too sure if money has yet passed hand, but obviously I think the deal is X amount upon signing and then Y at a later stage. But I couldn't confirm, Yeah.
You couldn't confirm. Okay.
Let me tell you, I'm not in that space. Right?
Okay, understood. Yes. Yeah, understood. Now, let us, now that it's back in government's hands, of course, and this is where I'm going to bring Bran here. We lost Mr. Joseph for a second. But one of the issues and concerns that Bran has always raised is just the nature of the CBI project, which tends to be real estate and tourism driven. Bran, you have any reaction to this out of court settlement on this matter? I'm not sure if you've been following it.
I'm a financial person, and how can I make comments about anything financial when I have no numbers to go on?
Yeah.
The only number I've heard there is 111 million. I haven't heard what it actually cost us. Mr. Duncan says X up front and Y. Why don't we get the numbers? Now that the deal is done, now that it's all been signed and the dust is settled, we, the people, to form an opinion, we need facts. We don't have any numbers, so we don't know how much we're paying. We don't know how much it's going to cost us in terms of finishing the project, How much did we have to pay to the developer? How are we going to fund this? Well, of course, passports.
Well, I mean, good point, Brian. I think in preparation for the discussion this morning, the information that's in the public domain would have been helpful. So obviously, the $111 million is in the public domain because that document, is on the ICSID website, right? In terms of the claim made by True Blue Bay Development and others. In terms of the actual settlement, the Parliament sitting that was last held, they spoke to the amounts that have been agreed upon. So that too is in the public domain in the 22 million.
And how much was that was
22
agreed?
million, 22 million US dollars.
We're going to have to pay them 22 million.
Yes, right. And obviously there are additional costs, which would include the compensation for people with the acquisition of the property. Because remember, hold on,
Brian, let him finish. Yes.
The way the project is designed, right? You have to go into the legal documents, so that people actually have property rights that need to be respected, right, in our jurisdiction. So compulsory acquisition is something that happens throughout the world. The question is, what is a fair and just compensation for those persons whose properties have been acquired? And that is
a question. So these are people who would have bought into the previous project, right?
Correct.
And are now part owners of the previous project and would have received passports.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Right. So we're now talking about compulsorily acquiring their shares in the hotel. Their ownership rights in the hotel. We're talking about buying that back. What happened to their passports? Do we get that back too?
No. That is untouched, not affected in any way, shape, or form.
So they would have bought in, gotten passports, and now we're buying them back, but they still have the passports. Do you see something wrong in this?
Absolutely nothing wrong in that. Your purchase had different components to it.
Well, I don't see how you can see there's nothing wrong with this, because if I buy something and it comes with certain rights, and I am there selling those rights, therefore, basically, I get a passport for nothing. Because
I think not, Brian. That is.
Let me finish. They would have bought into the scheme. They would have bought into the Kiwana-based scheme. Say they've spent 200,000, 300,000, they bought in and they got their passports. The government is now going to buy them back at somewhere about the same price. So they're going to get a passport for little or nothing.
No, we do not know that, Brian. So there's a freehold interest in the real property, right, that the government is going to acquire. And some people have freehold, interest in the property, which has to be.
So in addition to the 22 million, do we have an estimate as to how much we're going to have to pay these people for their property interests?
No, I do not have that figure.
But how can that figure not be there? I mean, this is what I'm talking
about. Hello, Brian, please.
This is what I'm talking about, the whole CBI project. The whole CBI project has no transparency. We get no numbers. We don't know how many people are involved. We don't know the numbers. We don't know.
No, so Brian, please.
Brian, let Richard get a word.
You cannot say you do not know if the information is available and you have not found it out. So let's start off with that. You say you didn't know about $111 million.
No, that's in the public domain. But
yes, but you came on here not knowing that it is there. And you say we don't know numbers. I say the number is there. The $22 million is also in the public domain.
Yes.
I'm saying to you now that the number of persons, investors, I do not have the concrete figure because I was not involved in that part of the details, but I'm quite certain that it will be made available. And what I could tell you is, one, in terms of the rule of law, people will be adequately compensated for the acquisition of their freehold interests.
And they keep their passports.
Yes, and that again too is clearly articulated in the release coming out from the Prime Minister's office. Right.
All right.
So just let's make those two things clear.
I Mr. Joseph, we lost you, but you're back. It looks like I don't know. Maybe Maybe it was sabotage. I can't say.
No, I don't believe in sabotage.
Okay, but Mr. Joseph, what the conversation that the tail end of the conversation that you came in here is just sort of a division of the spoils and what that would look like. So Brian's concern is that there still are issues in respect of transparency around that settlement. Is that something that you also concerned
Oh,
about?
that's something we're deeply concerned about. You
Yes.
see, you get in. You first of all, if the state is going to acquire the property, then the investors will have a right to seek compensation. We don't know how much that is, right? So we are saying we're moving into a situation of acquisition. These are investors. Remember, they invest into the property. They got a Grenada passport. They are looking for a return on their investment. The matter could not go further because of this dispute, a disagreement with the government, and they were sent to arbitration. We felt, as a government at the time, that we had sufficient evidence to show that what the investor was requesting was not justifiable, because you had to put 20% down as part of, you see, I'm saying that because I didn't hear what was said before.
Yeah.
But you must put 20% down of your own as equity. And based on the value of the property, you will calculate how many passports you will need. And the investor came and asked for more passports because he needed to raise an extra amount of money. I think it's 99 million. I don't remember how much it is now. So all this were going back and forth with the investor saying, well, I need some more. And we say, well, why you need all this additional sum of money when you are required to put 20%? And so the negotiation broke down, and that's where we are. So when the government announced that they will acquire it, and then the investors can seek compensation, we are very concerned, very, very concerned. And for the last 2 minutes what I heard from Brian, Samuel, I share some of his concern, because you don't know where that will end, how much we'll have to pay in the end for acquiring it. So that is our concern.
Okay, so if I may
No,
come
no,
in here,
no, Brian, yes, I want you to piggyback, please.
No, Richard, right. So if I'm
Richard,
in
sorry,
here,
go ahead.
so clearly there's a process that you follow when you come to compensate people when you acquire the property, i.e. you get a professional valuer to value the asset that is being acquired. So that's going to take place. So once the valuation is completed, then people are armed with the information they need to negotiate and see what is a fair and just compensation. So that is a work in progress. Yeah.
Okay. So now the property is back in state hands. Richard, talk to us in the context of now your role as chair of the CBI board. What would that property look like in the context of the CBI beneficiaries who initially invested into the project, as against the backdrop of what future plans there are for that project?
Okay, so that depends heavily, Kellon, on the strategy and approach that is going to be used by the substitute developer. And I use the word substitute developer, meaning that the government of Grenada, as far as I'm aware, is not prepared to be the developer of the project to bring it to finality, right? So a substitute developer to True Blue Bay has to be found. And that developer will be given the leasehold interest in the property. He or she will come up with his development plan in terms of working with Kimpton to, I guess, maintain the arrangement they had with or revise the arrangement or substitute the arrangement, because on that property, the government is committed to ensure that it's a 5-star property that is going to be completed and made available on the market for tourists to come to visit and to enjoy our island. So that is part part of the equation. It has to be a 5-star, as it were, property. Who the substitute developer is, we do not know. What are some of the
what about the previous developer? Does he not have an interest in that property anymore? Or has he just cut his losses and run at this point?
No, absolutely none. Absolutely none. That is done, dusted, and put away. He is not in any way, shape, or form part of the equation going forward. That's what.
Have you identified any substitute developers?
No. There are several who have been knocking on the door, and I think the authorities are going to do the due diligence, assess what they're prepared to bring to the table, and would make a pick in due course.
Now we quickly have to move on here. But speaking of financial implications, talk to us, Richard, about the 2023 CBI citizenship windfall and those financial implications. One of the concerns that Brian has consistently raised, and let us be clear, Brian has been a critic of the CBI program before the National Democratic Congress won the last election. So let us give him a break here. Okay, he has been very consistent on this issue, and there is this thinking that, history started on June 22nd or June 23rd last year, when there have been people who have been consistent critics of this program. But one of the concerns that Brian has always raised, is that the CBI applicants only invest in real estate. Now, can you offer us any insight into what other areas of economic development these some 2,000 citizens, more, just over 2,000 new Grenadian citizens, I hope they'll be able to cook oil down, would be engaged in the context of Grenada's national development? It's purely real estate? What does that look like?
No. Well, it's not solely. Remember, there are two tracks to making a contribution to the Grenada economy. There's the National Transformation Fund, which the government has full, complete control over to finance its different programs and so on and so forth. And I think we have to do a better job in disaggregating what those resources go into, so that the population can be edified. And I agree with Brian that there's a lot of work to be done to demystify, right? CBI and what it stands for, how it operates, how it works, and stuff like that. So, Brian, we are at one with that.
Well, that's one of the things that we are.
Brian, I will get to you.
That might be so. As we get to know each other better, there might be more that we could agree on. But just to say that, so let's go on then to the National Transformation Fund, and then inside of that, there's also an earmarking and lodging of some of those funds into a investment portfolio to create buffers into the future. What we have discovered is that while that was always on the cards, the actual mechanisms were not in place, and there was absolutely no money lodged into a bank account or into building out that investment portfolio as a buffer going forward. So that is in train as we speak, and has been effected actually as we speak. So then when we come to the actual the investment in real estate now, that is under what we call Section 11 of the program. Yes, Brian, you are quite right. The majority of the funds have gone into real estate. Not just real estate, tourism real estate. Not just tourism real estate, high-end tourism real estate.
Mega resorts.
Hold on. Resort, if you look at the census, it's resorts and villas, right? So some people have a mixed model. So I'm suggesting to people that the Morris Bishop International Airport, when it was constructed and built as the gateway to Grenada's economic future, that airport had to assist us, or has to assist us with two things: the export of goods, right? Obviously, the import of goods, and of course, the tourism arrivals. The viability of the airport rested heavily on room stock, and people always ask chicken and egg, which one comes first, and so forth. So my submission is that the continued building out of our tourism plant is key to the viability of the international airport. And I think that the Grenada as a country is well on its way to achieving that. A more viable international airport is stronger tourism sector, a more viable tourism sector. And of course, as we know, as a consumption engine, tourism is an employer of great significance in these jurisdictions. So again, job creation for our people, backward linkages towards agriculture, crafts, and stuff like that. So I just wanted to underscore those, but I have absolutely no problem at all with the emphasis that has been placed on CBI as far as high-end tourism infrastructure is concerned. And by the way, some of these developments are going to induce further development and transformation. If you look at St. David, for example, when Six Senses is open at Intercontinental, and by the way, Six Senses are now hiring people, so it's coming to fruition. That is going to transform St. David.
But you know, but it's Richard.
In here?
No, yeah, let Richard finish. But
one last
go ahead.
The
Yes.
infrastructure is also important. In other words, the risk assessment. Will Six Senses and Intercontinental, for example, result in water shortages in Lackalum and Current? We don't know. Will the demand for electricity in Six Senses and Intercontinental lead to load shedding? We don't know. So what I'm saying is that these things, and is the road infrastructure, for example, sufficient to give people the kind of experience they need from the airport to Six Senses and back? So I'm saying there's a whole, other cascading of issues that need to be resolved that will cause the economy and cause the country to grow and develop as a consequence. Yes, there's need for diversion now to signal to potential developers the areas in which we would want to see them come and participate in our further growth and development.
Specific prioritization, yes.
Local potential developers who must learn the craft.
So yeah, but Brian, before you get a word in, and believe me, I will get to you. But Mr. Joseph, in hindsight, this current administration, remember when they led protests up at Lasajas opposing that project, Mr. Joseph? In hindsight, you have any thoughts to perhaps the change of heart in respect of their posture towards this project, sir? Because your administration spoke about those jobs and spoke about the potential for that project.
I think they were short-sighted.
Okay.
Because, yes, very short-sighted. Here we are trying to move out of the south of the island to get five-star hotel and top class outside of St. George's, and St. David's was identified, Lasajas area, and you had a developer that was prepared to take the risk and invest money in a Six Senses hotel in St. David's that will create all the linkages now that we are hearing about. And you had protesters saying it will affect the environment. An environmental study was done and everything was looked at. Now you're hearing a different tune. I am happy that the government has embraced it, because I couldn't understand the objection to two hotels, not one and the two, the Six Senses and Intercontinental coming to St. David's. Last week we have started interviewing people for Six Senses, because it's going to be open shortly and they need to train these people. They will have over 200 people employed there, plus the benefits to the farmers and the fishermen and all the other people in the area. And so that development will transform St. David's. And we are looking forward to other development that we will see under the CBI. I know we have a mega one in Livera. I really hope this one come true, because it will transform not only the northern part, but the rest of Grenada. But it seems that if the dependence is on CBI to complete it, with all the threats to the CBI, visa imposition of visas and so on by the European Union and by the UK, and the threat from the US Congress, if that come true and it is effective, it will seriously affect the development of this mega project in St. Patrick's and future projects. So while I'm happy for the government that they get a windfall now, they must be very careful with moving forward. What happens next year if action is taken?
And there is a cautionary tale. Yes, there is a cautionary tale we should discuss. But yeah, but
Vanuatu, look
yeah,
at Vanuatu, what happened. So we have to be cautious.
Now, Brian, I want to get you in here. I apologize but I needed to get Mr. Joseph in here. But Brian, please proceed. A lot was said.
In Trinidad, they got oil and gas. And anybody who knows Trinidad will tell you that that's a blessing and a curse. It's easy money. It's the same thing with CBI. It's easy money. And easy money is not valued because it's just easy to get. You just sell more passports. And that we're not looking at the implications of selling these passports. We've sold 2,000 passports for the first half of this year alone. That's an annual rate of 4,000 passports, in addition to the 10 or 15 that we issued before. Nobody knows. What is the implications for Grenada? Why is it that this real estate option is so skewed to tourism and hotels? There's two sides to every story: the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah, we could talk about Six Senses, and I'm not terribly against Six Senses. I think it's the wrong location, but it's a good brand and it's a good product that they're doing. Let's look at the ugly. What are they doing at Levra? What are they doing at Mount Hartman? We don't know. Up to now, we don't know. Levra is a complete and utter disaster for Grenada. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the roads. We don't have the people up there. We don't have anything to do it. What was it? 1,500 room hotel plus villas plus this. Where's the water coming from? Where's the waste going to? None of these. Where's the electricity coming from? None of this is answered. Same thing with Mount Hartman. I got threatened on Facebook this week for asking a question about what's happening at Mount Hartman. We don't know. Is it a university? Is it a university town? All we know is that they've destroyed a whole bunch of mangroves and they're building something up there, which nobody knows. So this is what gets me about this program. It's the lack of transparency. For every good project, there's another one which makes it completely the opposite. Yes, maybe we do need to get more, Grenadians here, educated Grenadians. There's one group of people who we should not only sell passports to, we could offer them passports to. That's the graduates from the medical school. All of those thousands of graduates who have been over the years, and they have a vested interest in Grenada. Most of them love Grenada. Give them passports. Make them think of coming back to Grenada and retiring after they've finished their careers abroad. Let them contribute to Grenada. Why is it that we only sell passports for tourism mega projects? We have heritage projects which are crying out for funding. The restoration of the George House, the restoration of Fort George, the restoration of the forts on the hill there. All of these things. Why is it we are so myopic in seeing one?
But Brian, if I may push back there, I mean, Mr. Duncan just articulated the manner in which these revenues are allocated. He speaks specifically of the National Transformation Fund as well. So I believe
I think all of it should go. I think if we're selling passports, every dime should go into the National Transformation Fund. Every dime should go to the government. Because when it goes to these private schemes, that's where the accountability ends. When Levra said that they have spent $90 million to date on developing Levra, is that audited? I went up there. I don't see $90 million worth of development. I just see a whole bunch of cleared land. We have no control. If we're going to sell let's not beat around the bush here. It is our patrimony that we are selling, right? We're selling our nationality. Like these people this is a new one on me, Richard, and I'm still shocked that these people bought investments and received passports in Kiwana Bay, and now they're going to be bought back, so they will end up square, and they will still have their passports, and their children will have them, and their children's children will have them. So they got the passports. They will have gotten the passports for nothing. We're playing with fire. We don't know the implications, the long-term implications of what we're doing. When last year, early this year, when the Ukraine war broke out, all the OECD countries that sell passports stopped selling passports to Russia, except us. We established an office in Moscow to sell passports. Most of these 2,000 passports that we sold in the first 6 months of this year, Richard, can you tell me how many of those are Russians and what's the breakdown between nationalities?
Okay, so Kalon, let me start off with
yes, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, if you may, right? So I think Oliver has done an excellent job in highlighting what, to my mind, is the major risk facing the CBI program, right? So we speak of a windfall, and we understand where that windfall came about. I think Brian just segued into it in terms of the Russian market. So to answer your question, Brian, the overwhelming majority, maybe 90% of the applicants approved so far, has been in the area of Russian nationality. So that one, I think.
And have we thought of the implications of this?
Brian, let him finish, please. Brian, let him finish.
Yeah, ask for the number. I'll give you the number, roughly speaking. So let's come now to the question of the revenue flow. So Oliver made a brilliant point that we need to look at the downside risk and to manage that downside risk. So the CBI, for example, committee has almost completed its strategic plan for the period 2024 to 2026 as required by the Public Finance Management Act and any good thinking governance board. We have, as part of that plan, our marketing strategic plan that we are fine-tuning and refining, so we know what we have to do, how we have to invest in trying to generate new streams of interest for the continued sustained development of the CBI program. He also mentioned the fact that there are 2 or 3 arenas in which the reform of the program's plural, right, is driven. We talk about the UK, the US, the OECD, FATF, and the EU. And yes, these are things that we have to manage and we have to participate in. The CBI committee is committed to lower the risk profile of our program. We are not particularly concerned about what other programs do. We would like all of us to operate in such a way that our programs are beyond reproach. But in our case, we are going to be doing that which is necessary to ensure that the risk profile is lowered and that we do a credible job. Now, let me put a footnote here. The staff of the CBI work extremely hard. The acting CEO during her tenure and all the staff. There's a new CEO and they continue to work very hard and seriously and so on to improve the efficiency. We work with our international due diligence providers to make sure that the quality of the assessment done on these applicants is top-notch, and we do our adjudication process with an eye out for ensuring that nothing slips through the crack. None of us, we always say, would want to turn on our TV on BBC or CNN and hear a Grenadian or a person holding a Grenadian passport has been picked up for a wrong that we should have detected prior to making that decision. If the wrong he or she committed is afterwards, that's fine. But we do not want that. So we do a very meticulous job along with FIU, JRCC, the Joint Regional Communication Center out of Barbados, to make sure that this is what we are doing. Top-notch DD, excellent risk management. That, I think, will help to sustain the program, along with other things that Brian has implied that we need to do.
Now, we have a question and then we'll take a break and come back with the rest of the program here. This viewer is asking, how much would it cost to complete the project, meaning the Kiwana Bay project? Not that the project is in the hands of the government. Would the individuals hired become civil servants? I don't think that would be the case.
Well, if you want me to answer very quickly before you break,
sure.
We do not know how much it would cost. The substitute developer, whoever he or she is, when they take control of the site, will do the assessment of the joins, the designs, the actual physical, state of the infrastructure and stuff like that. And they would do an assessment. We would want to put in our own QSs to review that and make a determination as to the, appropriateness of that figure and have it approved, such that the person will not be coming back for $99 million more, right? And nobody know where the first 50 went. You don't want those kinds of things happening around with your development. And that's where the internal controls and the escrow account and the monitoring and reviewing by the CBI unit comes into play. And that Kiwana Bay experience a lesson for all of us that nobody should want to repeat.
Now, there's another question. I came in late and I missed the premise of this, but my question, and this is directed to you, Mr. Duncan, what was the reason or is the reason for the increase in CBI fees?
Well, I'm not too sure that there has been an increase in CBI fees. In the case of Grenada, from one year to the next, there has been none as far as our program is concerned. I know in the case of some kits, if that's what the person is alluding to, the European Union has elucidated what they call 6 principles that would like to see these programs adhere to, and again, lowering the risk profile and making sure that these programs are properly run. And they have actually stated in those principles to SEM kits that there's a price range within which they should peg their program, because obviously, as we all know, people have been doing things that are not quite on with some of these jurisdictions with the price at which they were pegging their program.
Okay. All right. So we had a fact check there. Thank you. Viewers and listeners, please stand by. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Spice Alcohol Grenada. My name is Crystal Simeon, and I am the owner of Island Learning Grenada. A bit about myself. I am a Grenadian, born and raised in Grenada from the Virgin Parish of St. David. I have lived in Grenada for most of my life. I was educated in Grenada and moved to Canada in 2013 and have been living in Western Canada for the last 10 years. At Island Learning Grenada, we are focused on educating on everything Grenadian. Special offering for members of the Grenadian diaspora. You can contact us on 473-535-4745, or you can register for our personalized webinars on our website www.islandlearning.gd. Once you sign up, we'll send an email communication to you once you register on our website. Grow your love, passion, commitment, connection. 2473. Bye.
And welcome back to the Bubb Report, viewers and listeners, and we thank you for staying with us. If you have not shared the program, please ensure that you do so other people can join in on this very important fiscal conversation on matters of national development. And Richard and Brian and Oliver, I hope that you guys can get together and have maybe a drink. I'm going to sponsor that down there at Coconut Beach.
I'll take you up on that.
You guys. All right, but let us continue this conversation, gentlemen. Now, in the last sitting of Parliament, in the Senate at least, the legal affairs minister spoke about the reversal of the the Grand Beach land lease, Mr. Joseph. It appears that there is a sort of a ping pong approach to this. You know, the government changes and then the lease goes back to what it was. Mr. Joseph, any reaction to that? Of course, we heard ad nauseum your leader of the opposition and other members of your opposition express their concerns over that. Is there anything else that you wish to add to what was articulated there?
Well, I think our concern was well articulated by Dr. Mitchell. If you're going to, again, acquire, you have to pay compensation. And we are concerned about the level of compensation because we do not know what it will cost. And we are concerned about the cost to the state because state resources that will be used. And are there other alternatives we could look at? And so a lot of questions were raised both in the lower and in the upper house that are still unanswered. And well, I'm not sure, Mr. Duncan, being a technical person, not in Parliament, to be able to answer.
I don't think I would put Mr. Duncan on the spot here. Mr. Duncan, please telegraph to the Minister of Finance that we want him here, but he does not come on the Bubb Report. I don't know why, but please go ahead, Mr. Joseph.
Yes, so I'm saying the concerns were raised in public that we have regards to, anytime we talk about acquisition, you see, then correspondingly, you will have to talk about compensation. And that is where our concern lies. And it is still our concern, and we hope that the government will be transparent with the people of Grenada, not just with the opposition, but with the people of Grenada, because it's the people's money, taxpayers' money, that will be used to pay compensation.
But do you feel as if your previous administration was transparent in respect of how that deal was fleshed out?
Yes, the public knew about it. It went to Parliament. You said you may disagree on whether the government should give leasehold or freehold. It's not a question of transparency. We came out clear and said what it was. But this government decided that listen, lands and Grenada's beach should never be freehold.
Correct, but don't you agree with that approach? That particular lands in particular areas of the country that are under a public stewardship should not be given such exorbitant leases.
Well, except you have a clear land use policy. See, that's the problem.
Well, no, Mr. Joseph, we do not have a clear land use policy in Grenada.
Right.
We don't.
So when you say certain areas, it must be clearly demarcated. You see, a lot of work must take place. It has to be, where do you want for resorts? You know, which area of Grenada you will give a leasehold? Or are you totally against freehold? Is it a clash bank thing that once it's crown lands, no freehold? Or based on the location, it could be freehold or leasehold. I think these are the questions that need to come out clear in the public and have a debate, you know, that concerning these issues, because every government will have their policy and what they think is the best way going forward. So if this government chooses that way, let us have an open discussion. And is it how you treat with crown lands? Because government have crown lands all over Grenada. So I think we need to have a national debate on that.
Okay. Let me see, Brian, if you want to add anything here in respect of land use policy. Now, that has been one of the pressing concerns in the national community in Grenada. That lack of a land use policy in many respects has promoted, according to the current Prime Minister, Vai development. You know, you have warehouses in places that should be earmarked for tourism purposes. You have hotels going up in places that are considered wetlands, and Brian, you were threatened from not encroaching on those wetlands. but let's get your thoughts, Brian, on the whole idea of
we have no planning, not just land use planning. We have no planning. We don't do planning. Our environmental planning is a disaster. It really is. And Grenada is not the same in this. In the rest of the Caribbean, we have a terrible record of environmental planning and land use planning in general. And as you say, you got big, 40-foot container trucks right next to the, 5-star marina and so forth. There's no consistency in what we do. I totally agree that prime lands on, say, Grand Anse and the other prime beachfronts, because we don't have a lot, they should be leased and not outright purchased. Koyaba built their hotel very successfully on a 99-year lease. So I think that is a wise policy, but we need to have a land use plan that has teeth. And what really happens is that, we have a plan, but it is never implemented. It's never monitored. And everything is, as the Prime Minister said, just do it. And, damn the consequences. We have no planning. And that's a huge negative, not just in getting back to land prices now and the CBI. The price of land in the southern end of Grenada is becoming exorbitant for ordinary Grenadians, because a lot of it is being bid up by well-heeled foreigners who have CBI and alien landholding licenses and so on. So Grenadians are being priced out of the market. Hence my concern about the whole skewness, the whole myopia of this CBI scheme. It is all geared to real estate, tourism, real estate, villas, hotels. I have a direct question for Richard. Can you please tell us what is happening, what is being built at Mount Hartman?
Well, Richard is not the developer. I don't think he
No,
has the position to answer that.
No. But Kelon, I think when we come on these programs, we have to decide who is the interviewer.
Yeah, yes, I agree. Richard, Brian, let him answer. Let him answer.
One, two. If we have a debate topic, then let us prepare that topic and come here and debate. But it's really and truly unfair to me, to the listening public who is trying to edify themselves on the topics that you have put forward, Kelon, for this segment to go down the road that we are going. However, Brian did make the point. He asked the question and answered it for himself earlier on. He's not too sure if it's a university tongue, because he has heard different terminologies used over time.
Yeah.
So there is a development agreement between the developer and the government of Grenada, which obviously any agreement is subject to change and renegotiation. Mm-hmm. I am not privy, Brian, to any renegotiation as to what the development was initially crafted to be between the developer and the authorities. So whatever is on a record that you might have access to is what is supposed to be built. Now, for the very first time in our tenure as a CBI committee, we have visited almost all the project sites. Sometime in July, I think late July, for the very first time, right? To eyeball what is happening on the ground and to interact with the developers, representatives, and so forth, who were expecting us, and we had some conversation and so on and so forth. So there's no active work taking place apace in Mount Hartman as we speak, right? There might be some contemplation in terms of the precise evolution of that project, and when the dust is settled, people like yourself, Brian, would be edified. When you go on the website, you would probably see an update, approved project, because not just to list the approved project, but to give a description as to what the project is supposed to be in terms of the agreement and the outcomes that are expected. So there's some enhancements that we would want to make in terms of public disclosure and information. To your point, Brian, demystifying and shedding some light on the CBI. So it's early days still, but we are, in our strat plan, we have these initiatives in the pipeline for execution.
Yeah. Any comments on the previous question that was put to Mr. Joseph in respect of the leasehold there at Grand Beach, or is that something that you prefer to stay away from? You're not. That's not in your wheelhouse, I'm sure.
No. It's not in my wheelhouse. It's not in my wheelhouse as such. But in terms of public policy analysis, which is something I bring my mind into and I tend to track, it is very clear that when you have a lessee relationship, the lessor being in this case the government of Grenada, the lessee being whoever the hotelier is, the lessor has certain leverages over the lessee, because in the lease you could put certain conditions and so on that they must fulfill, and if they don't, then you could terminate the lease. If it is freehold, then it's game over. So, for example, mention has been made in the parliament for the site where the original or old SGU campus was. And it is said that that lease is coming up for renewal, and therefore the lessee now has leverage to say to the lessee, right? The government could say to that person who has the leasehold interest that you are not in full compliance with the original lease that is up for renewal now, and therefore, until and unless you commit and demonstrate certain things, this lease is not going to be renewed. If it were freehold, the government has no more say. So to Brian's point, these arrangements where you can sell the leasehold interest and maintain the freehold interest gives the government, as custodian of the people's asset, leverage over the lessee for a prolonged period of time. And that holds true for Kiwana. Hence the reason the authorities are attempting to, or have succeeded in large measure in acquiring the freehold interest in that property.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Mr. Joseph. That's Mr. Duncan's theory of the case here. Do you not agree with that counter argument that is being advanced?
Well, that's not a counter argument. That's a legal position. If you are freehold, the government will have to acquire. If you are leasehold, they will renegotiate the lease at the end of the lease period. So legally, that's what it is. There's no counter argument to that. So wherever the government see freehold and they decide to acquire, all I'm saying, then they will have to pay compensation. That is it in law. There's no other way about it. If they choose to go that way, and the government has the prerogative to decide what way it wants to go. Our concern is that let us be transparent and so clear on what the compensation you're paying.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the final issue here has to do with the supplementary budgetary allocation and the debate that ensued as a result of that in the parliament. Now, coming out of that, there were two agenda items in that parliamentary sitting. One has to do with the supplementary allocation in respect of the 50th independence anniversary celebrations. Mr. Joseph, your party's theory of the case here is that the administration came to Parliament for an allocation without giving the public a thorough breakdown of a line by line items in respect of how that monies would be spent. Do you feel as if, according to the Minister of Finance, he articulated that in the Finance Committee meeting, however, that those issues were properly fleshed out? Does your party not agree with what the Minister of Finance articulated in Parliament?
Well, I am not a member of the Finance Committee, as you know.
Yes.
Right? So I don't know what took place in the Finance Committee. But that is different what takes place in Parliament. That's where you go for approval, not at the Finance Committee meeting. At the Finance Committee, you go through all the numbers, the allocation, the purpose. The government will give its rationale. That's Finance Committee. When you go to Parliament for an allocation, the Minister of Finance has a responsibility to explain. And therefore, what was happening is that the opposition, all they were doing was questioning the amount. They say, okay, 7.5 million, fine. You're going to use it from September to December because you did not make any such allocation in the budget that you presented for 2023. 2 million will be used to pay for the $50 commemorative note. That's so you need 52 million this year. You have 5 million left because a budget is coming up for 2024 that will be presented in December, which you will put in the numbers for the celebration. Mm-hmm. So we want to know what the other 5 million will be spent on. And that is where the answers were not forthcoming. So that was the issue that the opposition had, that they know the answers to how the money will be allocated was not made known.
Mm-hmm. The Saudi loan, the authorization in the event that the administration, the way that the Prime Minister articulated his view on the matter was that they go to Parliament to get an authorization for a loan, but it does not mean that they're going to draw down on that particular loan. Do you feel as if it was necessary for them to seek a loan against the backdrop of the $100 million US grant, I believe, that Saudi Arabia was providing to Grenada in any event for climate smart infrastructure.
No, I'm not aware that Saudi Arabia is giving a grant of 100 million to Grenada. Is that what you're saying?
Let me pull it up here. It's providing for the climate smart infrastructure.
Yeah, you say Saudi Arabia is giving a grant to Grenada of 100 million US?
Well, that was reported, that was contemporary reporting earlier this year. I'm saying it's different from what the Parliament.
No. Listen, that's not correct. If Saudi Arabia is giving a grant of 100 million US for climate smart program or whatever program, it's a grant money. You don't need a loan authorization for that. What the government came with is a loan authorization, and you must come to cabinet and parliament with it. Saudi Arabia don't give countries in the Caribbean grants, huge grants from my experience. So what the opposition is questioning, you want a loan, authorization for a loan? What are the conditions? What is the rate of interest? I recall when I was Minister for Economic Development, we did not proceed with a loan from Saudi Arabia because of the interest rate. We got money from the World Bank in different tranches of 25 million at 0.75%, 10 years grace period, 40 years repayment. And so we are saying you can look other places. So let us know the terms and conditions of the loan that you're seeking from Saudi Arabia, because this is not grant money. This is a loan, an authorization to get a loan. Nothing wrong in seeking authorization, because you have to get authorization to borrow. But let us know the terms, the condition, and for climate smart program, the Green Climate Fund and other places, they have a lot of resources as grants. Couldn't we look to these funding agencies first to get grant money for climate resilience instead of having to borrow 100 million US? That will increase the debt to GDP ratio. These were all the questions that were being asked, and justifiable so. We hope that the government side will come back to Parliament when they have the terms and conditions of the loan, or if once they are proceeding to borrow, so that the general public can know the terms and conditions of a loan from Saudi Arabia.
But Mr. Joseph, one of the interesting, I would not even call it one of the interesting contexts of that debate, it involved your boss, Dr. Keith Mitchell, the leader of the opposition, in which he was in possession of a document in a letter that was addressed to him. Why is it that we need to have some kinds of a Records Act in Grenada where public officials who were in government before should not be taking documents that belong to the state into their personal possession? Do you feel that was a misstep on Dr. Mitchell's part to be quoting a letter in the Parliament that ought to have been in the confines of the botanical gardens or the executive arm of the government?
I think the best person to ask that is Dr. Mitchell.
Well, please. Well, Mr. Joseph, Mr. Joseph. Well, but you are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary? You are permanent secretary.
The politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Joseph. All right, gentlemen, for some closing comments, thank you all for being so patient today, Mr. Duncan and Mr. Samuel. Thank you again for always agreeing to appear on the program so that we can continue to have those conversations around CBI. But Mr. Duncan, one of the points that you made is about demystification of the program. I believe there still is, based on the comments here this morning as well, a significant lack of public understanding in respect of the nature of the program. Many still see it as being shrouded in secrecy. Many still see it as being shrouded in corruption, as being shrouded in impropriety. So there is a lot of work on your part, Mr. Duncan, for you and for those of us responsible media to also assist in that process as well.
So, Dr. Bob, fully and completely agreed. As I said, we have our marketing and PR strategic plan that is almost near to completion. And when we roll that out over time, we will be able to poll the general public as time go by to see whether and to what extent, they have a better appreciation and affinity for the program. So that is fully accepted. Just let me, if you're inviting, just wrap up comments to say
yes, sir.
How pleased I am to have been on this panel with Mr. Oliver Joseph and Mr. Brian Samuel. I know Oliver quite well. We worked together in the ministry. We collaborated on the CBI program, the Investment Migration Roundtable over time. So I think we both have a good understanding as to where we are at. He did point out some pertinent risk and headwinds, as it were, and we are fully aware of those and will be addressing them, in the months and years ahead. When it comes to the question of the compensation, Kiwana Bay or even Radisson, right, Grenada, the property valuation obviously is a way to go because people are entitled to fair and just compensation after the asset being acquired is valued. I think the philosophy of the government in pushing leasehold sale as opposed to freehold sale is very clear and I think fully merited. And the final comment has to do with the Saudi loan. I didn't get to chime in on that one. And yes. I think Oliver is quite right in saying that the Saudi Development Fund does not give you grant money as a loan development outfit. The Saudi government may have and has given government grants in the past. The loan authorization is in process. It's pretty much in train in terms of getting parliamentary approval for authorization to borrow. As he rightly said, when the specific terms and conditions are finally negotiated and known, obviously that will be disclosed, but it cannot now be done because negotiations and, what will I say, simulation as to the 10-year interest rate to determine the grant element in such borrowing, consistent with his own point that you need to get concessionary as possible with these funding is well accepted. Again, thank you for having me on the phone.
Absolutely. Brian?
Thank you. Just to wrap up, my points, everybody knows it. I say it all over the place. We have to stop this complete focus on one area of the economy to invest these funds. It's a windfall, but we're not investing it wisely. We're investing it in projects that we have no control over where the money goes. We have no idea what's going on in these projects. If we're selling our national patrimony, let's make it clear that people should benefit from the money that we get, not private developers. We're holding the whole country hostage to making the airport viable. No, there are many other areas of the economy that are badly in need of investment funds. Agriculture, heritage, health, education. But no, all of this windfall money is going to tourism. And for every lesser Jess, there is a Mount Hartman and there is a Lever. And we have no control over this. We have control over, the government has control over many aspects of the economy and so on, but it has zero control over where this windfall money goes. We, the people, should benefit from the sale of our national patrimony, and the money should go into things that benefit the people, health, education, etc. That's my comment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Brian. And of course, Mr. Joseph, I would always give you compliment and credit because there was never a time when we invited you on the Bubb Report that you declined. I can't remember any occasion, even while you were in government as a government minister, that you declined. So I wish your boss, Dr. Mitchell, and some of the ministers in the National Democratic Congress would also learn from you because you are not afraid of facing the music. So over to you, sir, for some closing comments.
Thank you very much. I think you're a very interesting panel. You see, when you have panelists that are knowledgeable in the area and not come on a program just to defend a position, whether it's for NMP or opposition or NDC, you have more, brilliant ideas. If you come in with a defensive mode, you don't get anything.
Yeah.
But you see, Mr. Richard Duncan is a highly technical person, very knowledgeable of public finance and public policy. He's now chairman of CBI. So he's not coming here and take sides. And that is what I like about this debate, because I found, to be honest with you, in all the forum you invited me, I think this was one of the better ones that we had. What I like to say in closing is that now you have government and opposition in parliament having debates over the issues. I think it's a healthy thing. We need more transparency. People need to hear the answers to all the questions that have been asked. Sometimes I get the impression that the government side gets upset with when questions are raised by the opposition. Let's use the parliament, because they are parliamentary representatives representing the people of Grenada, to explain to the people of Grenada the real issues facing them, because what is involved is taxpayers' money, and we must use it wisely and for the development of the country. So I thank you very much for the invitation.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you so much. As always, I enjoyed having that discourse with you. Certainly on our next visit to Grenada, drinks would be on me at Coconut Beach Restaurant.
We'll take you up on that, for sure.
Yes, we will take you up on it,
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, we wish to thank you for staying with us for this week's episode of the Bubb Report. Of course, we thank our earliest spotlight guest, Dr. Akasha, for also being our esteemed spotlight guest this week. And of course, the panelists, Mr. Richard Duncan, Mr. Richard Duncan, OBE, I want to make sure I get that correct, Mr. Brian Samuel, and Mr. Oliver Joseph. Of course, if you have not shared this program, please make sure you do, so that other people can get an opportunity to listen in on this very important conversation that we had here this week. On behalf of the producers of the Bubb Report, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb, wishing everyone a safe and productive week. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Very proud of what